Hello and welcome everyone to another episode on the Fireside Chat about Taboo Topics series, which is a series that is near and dear to my heart because we are talking about all these things that are, in my opinion, too little talked about in society at large and that we often feel are maybe even inappropriate or somehow shameful. And today we are talking about challenging life transitions, the crises. We all know them. We all go through them, and it's completely normal as a part of the human existence and the human experience. And it's important to know how we can hold ourselves, or to learn how we can hold ourselves through them, so we come out the other side feeling more connected to ourselves, stronger because of the process we went through. And also, not to say that after coming out the other side, there is never again going to happen anything like that. No, it's an ebb and a flow as life is. And we are going to talk all about this today with my guest, Corinne Konrad Calder. Hello, Corinne. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit, like who you are, where you live, what you do? And let's start with a cycle check-in. So naming the day of your cycle that you're on and 3 words for how you are here today.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me. It's a joy to be here, and also welcome to all the listeners. I'm on day 18, so really kind of inner summer, just past ovulation, and I'm feeling quite in the flow, like in the flow. There's a lot of things happening at the same time, but I feel like during this phase of my cycle, I'm able to just navigate different trends and angles. I have guests in the house, and lot of things going on simultaneously. And so my name is Corinne Konrad Calder, as you heard, and I'm Swiss born. Maybe that explains the accent. But I've lived all over the world in the last 2 decades now. And I'm a soul-based life coach, like Lisa as well. And I'm embodiment guide, teacher, and facilitator of women's groups. And I do that. Let's say recently I've moved to Dubai, from Hong Kong via Singapore. With my husband and my dog. And so this has been, a recent big transition for me, and a long transition too. Felt like never ending. And so I really love supporting other women through their life transitions, and to help them begin again, in love, in life, in their self-expression, which keeps changing, and in their self-leadership, really bringing them into their own self-leadership. Mm-hmm. So I think that's enough for now. And if you have a question, more later.
Thank you. I love that you're in your inner summer. I'm on the opposite side. I'm on day 30. So right before my bleed, the last days of inner autumn, moving into winter. And it's fun to see how life works like this. We are never the same at any given day, and that's completely okay. And we can have a chat from summer to winter. I'm really looking forward to this too, as life transitions, the hard times are those where we need to support each other, really reflect our light, like the light of the other, back to themselves when they have maybe lost trust, started doubting. And usually we come to these professions and callings due to our own history and story. So Corinne, would you like to share a little bit about your own journey? You already hinted at the transition that happened these past few years, and how that impacted the sphere of work and with whom you work.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think like all of us here, yeah, we have lived through many different transitions, right? And so have I, and some are more like relationship related, some had to do with my marriage, others with career, or then later on business. And then for me also, because I've moved to a lot of different countries, I've built a life and ended a life in many different places. So a lot of transitions there too. Um, I think I think I'm going to speak probably because it's the freshest, mostly today about the just current one, yeah, the relocation. But I think through every transition or the crisis, or whatever we want to call it, life shattering events, we learn different things about ourselves, yeah, as we move through them. And what has also happened for me is that I I've learned to just pick up or understanding and gaining more insight in the nature of change and in the nature of the ending of things all the way to the beginning of things, and that whole place in between. Yeah, that in between place. And that's the transition. I also used to work with women as a birth doula, helping them, from pregnancy, becoming a mother, the whole childbirth experience. And there you see transition play out very much. So I've learned in the last 2 decades a lot around just that, gaining insight. And that has spurred this interest, yes, of becoming a soul-based coach and working with women who live through transitions. Now, the latest one, which was big, it wasn't world-shattering. It wasn't like, as I would say, the hardest by all means. But I also think the more we live through them, the more we start to pick up tools. Yeah. But it was a long one, and that made it quite hard. So my husband and I, we lived in Hong Kong for like 7 years plus. And, we built a life there. That's where we moved through our own challenges as a couple. And then we got married there. I started my business. I became a full-time entrepreneur or soulpreneur, from the corporate world, moving into that. And with friendships, of course. And that was also periods where we tried to have a child, where I tried to get pregnant, but unsuccessfully. Yeah. So a lot has happened for us in Hong Kong. And then the pandemic happened, right, to all of us. Yeah. And during the pandemic, I just really started to realize, even though I loved the lifestyle we had on a little island, a beautiful sort of setting for a life, I also knew I really needed to leave Hong Kong. I want our family to leave Hong Kong. And and then that obviously started this 1.5 transition where we basically, I felt that our destination to settle again long term will be Dubai, but we couldn't go there straight away because certain things not being ready, and for the family it didn't really work yet to do that, so we had to go to Singapore, and then we were there, and that kind of was I called it like a cocooning phase. So I had at that sort of cocooning phase in Singapore before we then kind of moved now just 5 months ago to Dubai. Yeah. And so that in between 1.5, years, that's and in the cyclical terms, we would call that was a long autumn and winter. Yeah. I spent a lot of time there, first grieving the letting go of a home, even though I wanted it. So it's not that I didn't want it, but there's still grief. Yeah. And I think that's true with a lot of change. Yeah. And then, letting go of, for us, personal friendships, There are a lot of friends going into all direction, kind of losing a bit of definitely community, like arriving in Singapore, maybe knowing a few people, but it was not like what it was in our life in Hong Kong. And also kind of coming really to the end of the childbearing period. I mean, I'm still fully cycling, but I'm 45 years old now. Just one more layer there around really, like that this is also coming to an end, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that in itself is also it was also part of all that. Yes, and then asking, these big questions, which we always do when we do go through a big change. Well, what is it now that I want for this next phase in my life? What new chapter do I want to write? Where, with whom? What's important? And for me, a lot about this move to Dubai was I wanted to start moving closer back to Europe again. Yeah, after like 13 years away from Europe, I wanted to start moving closer, having really access to our family members easier, people visiting. So on a private level, that was that. And also on a professional and a business level, I wanted to start being closer again to just kind of Europe and the US too. Yeah. And then the question, what do I just, I'm 45 and what else do I just want to create? Yeah. With my business. Yeah. With my life. So a lot of feeling into the longings and, and envisioning and honing existing skills, picking up or deepening new skills, things like that. So that was
you've touched on a lot. Yeah.
So a lot of that in there.
Would you say it made a big difference for you to have this cocooning space where you could really give yourself time to grieve and go through that process before moving to Dubai?
I think it invited me into, I think personally, I would have rather just gone straight to Dubai because I like actually, when I know what I want, it's easy for me to actually go and do it, right? So it was challenging to some extent. I mean, I think through all the work that I've done and knowing transitions, I was able to be very present in the not exactly knowing and in the being in the cocoon. Yeah. But and in hindsight, look, there's always beautiful things that, I loved how I started to get even more into embodiment, for example, new, picking up new teaching skills around it, deepening existing ones. So new layers there. And that was definitely because I was in that cocoon. Yeah. Came out of it. I learned new things about how I handle physical stress in the sense of like the humidity, the humid all the year around humidity of Singapore. I hate it. I really do not like high humidity. I find it really tough on my body. I find it very oppressive. And I felt how that impacted me mentally too. And there I noticed how important, for example, swimming is, water, how healing water is. Yeah. So there's, as I say, in each transition, we learn new things about oneself. I think what was also what it gave me, because it was such a long period that I really had to believe in what I was feeling, which is that it is the best thing for us to now move to Dubai. And to advocate for that, like with my husband, and to lead us into this new chapter, because he was quite happy in Hong Kong and in Singapore. It was really me driving this, and so advocating and really listening. And even though it's not, I don't quite see it, but I can just sense that this is what, where we're moving into, right? So that was interesting, because I had to do that over a much longer period of time than ever before, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like in your case, it was this inner feeling of, I need to be elsewhere. This is no longer the place that calls me. There is somewhere else. And sometimes there are life transitions where life just happens and you get thrown into something that's starting.
Yeah.
And I believe that in any case, we often don't realize how important it is to go through all the emotions and allow for all the emotions to come up, to move through in societies where our full spectrum of emotions isn't necessarily welcome. It's no wonder that we don't know how to express, especially the more difficult emotions that are part of every transition. You mentioned grief. There could also, for some, be anger, fear, all of these emotions. So, do you have any practices or things like that you like to do, maybe also from an embodiment perspective, to help you support yourself with these emotions when they come up?
Yeah. And I call it, moving what you're feeling, I call it. And like my favorite go-to these days is really non-linear movement, which is a somatic modality where you move what you're feeling, where you release this tension that you're feeling, and so forth. There's lots of different modules within it. And I've been doing that almost every day in the last year, like during that transition. But also like before that even, or adding into that. So moving what you're feeling means like you give space, to whatever it is that you're feeling. And then you kind of you end up somewhere else. Yeah. I love to include touch. Yeah. Into all that, because touch is also very kind of soothing. That's where I feel like the kindness, the self-kindness, and the love for oneself, the self-mothering is coming in. Yeah. And so, I combine these two things specifically. And I think when it comes to emotional, to our emotional health, it's one way to do these things for ourselves. Yeah. And I do that for myself. But there's of course also being in a space with other people where you are being held. Yeah. Where you're just being held and seen non-judgmentally. And I think what comes in there are two things that help us to move through a transition better, which is connection with other people. Yeah. And I think, let's take a breakup. Yeah. A heartbreak, a breakup. There, I think it's important that you also surround yourself with other people who go through a breakup or through something similar, or have recently gone through it, right? With whom you can just talk about that thing that just takes up a lot of space in your life. Yeah. So there's connection with peers, with other people who are going through something similar. And then there's also being held either by a friend who is able to do that for you non-judgmentally, and who's also maybe able to ask you the right questions after you move through the emotions. Yeah. And if you don't have such a friend, then you go and work with someone professionally who can do that with you, for you. Yeah. So, I feel like if we don't move these emotions, like they get stuck, and we don't get the juice and the medicine and the learnings potentially that we want for the new beginning, right? But there's that thing there. So that one is really important for me. Nature, time in nature. I actually think it's universal. Maybe some people are more aware of it. Spending time in nature and observing the cycles and the rhythm of nature is, the being in nature is just healing for us. Yeah. Rain or shine, the observing nature just really gives us insight into the impermanence of things. Nothing is permanent. Everything is impermanent and constantly changing. And I think we get comfort from connecting with that, with the new moon and the rising moon, right? For example, or the autumn and the winter. It just gives us insight about, it gives us a deeper insight and the comfort of, where we are now, that too will change.
Mm-hmm.
It will. It always does.
Yeah, and that's a big piece with nature, because there are some neurological things happening when you are in nature. There is a co-regulation happening between you and the natural world. So having, for example, a sit spot, like a place where you go to every day, that could be in the garden or in a park nearby, or just even at home with a plant, and just connecting with that plant intentionally every day, just for a minute. That can make such a big difference to help regulate and soothe your nervous system. And then the other thing you touched upon, yes, community. So healing when you've got a really judgment-free space where you can allow yourself to open up and be held, even in the messiness that change brings with it. And because like, I like to say, a lot of wounds that we carry have been inflicted in relationships that were broken, like unhealthy relationships. So it needs these kinds of healthier relationships to heal. That's why community is an essential part. We are not meant to shoulder everything ourselves, as we are so easily led to believe in a society that says it's on you. You have the power and you can do this. Yeah, but maybe you don't have to. Like, you don't have to do it alone. It's okay to depend on other people. We are social creatures. There is some healing that can only happen in groups.
Yeah. Yes to everything that you said. And I have found personally, and I've shared that with others, I have made some of my best, most cherished friendships in life through times where I lived through hardship and or crisis, and was able to open up and just say how things are for me, in the rawness of it. Because at the end of the day, we all, whether we know it or not, it is in that where, if we are able to be seen there, that's when we go also deeper in friendships. Yeah. And so you can have a more, let's say, in German, we have lots of different names for a friend, right? We have nuances there, but like you have maybe an acquaintance. Until now, that person was an acquaintance, but you will go through something and you just feel like maybe a connection, or that person maybe has gone or is going through something similar, and you open up about your experience. The chance that can become something much deeper is very high. And there's always one person who needs to start. In any relationship, one person needs to be the person who opens up and begins to just be a bit more vulnerable. And yet, so one of the medicines coming out of big life transition, challenging life transition, is making new friends. At least that's something I have experienced.
That, or as you say, deepening the friendship, or even like when me and my husband, we have gone through a lot of my personal crises, and that has strengthened our relationship, because I learned something about myself that helps us in our joint relationship, right?
Yeah.
So seeing life transitions also as the opportunity to learn something about yourself and actually realize how strong you are. Not in the sense of you have to show up strong, but like, you can do this. You can actually do this.
Yes. Yeah, and right, the piece around, we touched on it earlier, I think self-kindness. Like, often we are our worst critics. Yeah. And really watch your self-talk. I think when we go through life transitions, big stuff, even more so, and especially if things just happen to us, right? We're not in control of life. Like, things just sometimes happen to us. Yeah. And no matter what it is. And watching our self-talk and if we hear a lot of inner self-critic voices or self-shaming, really ask ourselves, well, is that true? Is that actually true? And if we have a lot of that going on, then definitely seeking support for someone who can help you look at these things differently. Because if life is already tough, like we got like kindness with ourselves, and the thing we go through is very important.
Yeah, so basically also giving this non-judgmental space to yourself, right? That you've just described in community, but also doing that for ourselves while we hold ourselves through it. And as you say, take it step by step, day by day. Feel into, okay, where I'm at, do a cycle check-in. Look at, okay, where's my body at? Where is my capacity at? And what can I do today to honor that? As little as that may be, but just to show myself a little bit of compassion of, hey, it's okay to be the way you are right now.
Yeah.
And then, you go.
And when we also just really be aware of, if you go through something big, you just have less capacity. Like something big will take a lot of mental and emotional and also physical capacity, of you. Just be aware that something else might has to give a little bit. So you actually have time to process and to extract learnings and to ask yourself, what's the next chapter? How would I like the next chapter to look like? And that's you need space. You need space for that. So it's not maybe the time then to start heaps of other new things right away in one's life. If we don't have to.
Yeah.
Can't always plan it that way, of course.
Sure. And now we've looked at, okay, life transitions happen or we feel called to make them. And then there is this messy middle, and we've touched on things on how to hold ourselves through it. By the way, one thing, when you mentioned the grief, I believe and that you have been a birth doula or worked as a birth doula. I believe that is something that very few people realize when they give birth, that it's okay to experience intense grief for the life you're now leaving behind, even though having a baby can be a very joyful experience, but it can both be true and valid at the same time, right? So not judging, now there's only this or only that, but it's okay that two seemingly opposite emotions are present and true at the same time. Just holding this paradox.
It is a paradox, but and I think life is a paradox. It is bittersweet. There's heartbreak, there's joy, there's love. I think one of my personal favorite things that helps me through transition is connecting with beauty. Wherever I go, I look for beauty. I appreciate beauty. I create beauty, because no matter what's going on, there is also always beauty going on, whether it's in the form of a song that touches you, the smile of a newborn, even though you were tired as hell, the blossoming of a flower, but beauty in itself. And it's so, it's such a strong medicine when we move through transition.
Yeah, and the way you describe beauty, it seems, is the same that I would say, finding beauty in the imperfection.
Yeah, both perfection and imperfection, right? Both. In both. There's beauty in both. Yeah.
As you say, there's beauty in everything, depending on the perspective that you take. And so, I love that, because beauty is something that speaks to the soul. And beauty is, of course, for everyone, it can mean a different thing. But finding what evokes this sense of,
yes. Yeah.
And in every transition, in every death, so to speak, there is a new beginning too. You've already mentioned that, on the other side, there is a new beginning, which I dare say isn't always easy either, even though a new beginning might seem like the perfect thing. And I know that, especially in midlife, or at other times where we try to, I just want something new so that I will not feel what's present and like the uncomfortable emotions. And I will just start something new and everything will be fine. But I don't believe that's what new beginnings are about. It's not all rosy. They can be challenging too. So I would love to know what's your take on the new beginning that comes after or that starts with the life transition.
Well, I think the new beginning is more potent and has more ease when we allow time to digest the old, or where we're coming out of. Yeah, when we allow ourselves to rest, when we allow ourselves to feel and envision, and when we really take our time there. Yeah. And to support ourselves in the way that we did earlier. And really wait for the momentum to rise again into the new beginning. I think, rather than if we want to just, if a new beginning comes out of an avoiding, then we have missed something, right? And the likelihood is, that really, really depends what we just went. But if it is something where where there was something for us to learn, where we could change maybe a pattern in ourselves or a habit to then write a new chapter in a more aligned way, for example, right? Like if we avoid that piece, then the new beginning will just not be as fruitful, probably, or it will be harder. But I think there's definitely something about really. But I think when we have done all that autumn, winter sort of work, right? New beginnings usually, that they're not. We may still need, what's the word?
Retreat, support. Oh,
yes, support. At times, definitely. Energy. A new beginning will take energy. Yeah, it will take energy. And it's not all going to be smooth flowing. Always going to be certain obstacles, right? But the stronger we have the vision and the desire, and the clearer we have become in all that. My experience has been then the spring is, it will just flow, because you're then not just flow. I don't want to say that sounds so airy-fairy. Ease. There is another sense of ease and momentum. Let's leave it there. Yeah. And I think there's one piece, right, in order also to make the new beginning maybe smoother, is to just know that you can actively co-create life. You actively co-create with what life is serving up, but you also do it by really declaring what it is that you want. It's both. It's a paradox in itself again, right? It's both. And to place yourself or plant yourself in an environment where people are supporting you in that next chapter of your life. Yeah, it's give yourself the support again, the community, the people, the friendship, the resources, from where it's just easier to do that.
It's just so funny. I'm thinking, because of course you also raise a lot of nature metaphors at that, and like on one thing is, New Year's is not the time for new beginnings, but we are right now moving into spring. And as you said, like that's when the outside energy is also like, it supports you in making this new beginning. And that doesn't mean only make new beginnings in spring, but it's the same kind of energy when it comes naturally after you've gone through the grieving, through the letting go. Then the new energy can rise, and that's the moment where it can become more easeful, when you just go with the energetic flow of things. And also, when you were saying, put yourself in this environment, I was thinking, that's how we plant plants. Like we plant the seeds into an environment, and then we put water in it and nutrients in it. So that's your support system, basically, right? So we can compare our lives to that so easily.
Yeah, I mean, one beautiful metaphor for is just, okay, ask yourself, what does your soil need so you can actually grow and bloom into the.
I love that.
What does your soil need? And that will be a bit different for everyone. And then there's certain universal things. And these are the things we touched up earlier that I think we all really benefit when we have them and when we allow ourselves to have them. Yeah.
Before we start wrapping up, I want to ask one question because you knew very well what you wanted. That was how the change came about in the first place. But I know from personal experience and from sometimes it's so hard to know what do I actually want. Do you have a tip for us what you can do in that case to find out more about or become clearer about what it is that you actually want?
Yes, I think, this is an interesting one for me, and I've been speaking with a lot of people about that. And I'm not sure you're familiar with human design, right? So I know in my chart, I recently learned, I have this center, this part, this want center is filled with me. So for me, it has actually been easy, more like easier, I think, than for a lot of people to know what I want. Like, I know pretty well most of the time what I desire and want, and then it's more a matter of going forward and allowing myself this. That's another piece. Yeah. I think, and I've learned that for some people, it's actually first looking at, well, what is it that they don't want anymore? So really start concentrating on if you don't know what it is that you would like to have happen, yeah, well, what is it that you don't want to have happen anymore? Well, then you start there and you start to kind of take them apart a little bit. What's the opposite of that? Be the opposite of that, and not take it maybe too literal either, right? A longing is pointing us towards, it's kind of, it's not about, it's more the energy of what it is that you may want. Then it will become clearer and clearer and clearer.
Similar like a seed. You don't know what exactly the flower will look like. Yes, you know it's maybe a rose or something and it will have this kind of color, but you don't know exact shape and size and whatnot.
Oh.
And that's okay.
It's okay. So ask yourself what you don't want if you don't really know what you want, but also allow yourself to just know a little bit of what you want. Start there. A feeling about what it is that you want, a word, a picture, and then step by step, take active steps towards that. And then it will become bigger and clearer and more cool. And as you walk it, you will never know the whole thing. Yeah. Most of
that's really cool. Thank you so much. It makes so much sense and so helpful. If in case someone would like to work with you through that transition and in that new beginning, or if someone just has a question about anything you shared, where can they find you? How can they get in touch, stay in touch with you? What's your preferred way of being contacted, maybe?
They can get in touch through the website, the contact form there. I am on Instagram, but not all the time. So yeah, that is a channel too. And that's kind of where I place, most of the things that I'm doing. And yeah, and I'm having some live in-person workshops coming up again. Now then starting, I really picked that up again this year. So I'm going to London for a workshop that I gave, maybe Switzerland. So yeah, for anyone who's thinking.
But they can stay informed on your website. You will have it there. Okay. Yeah. I will make sure to include the links and everything in the show notes. Yeah. My last question to you, Corinne, what is your message to the world? What do you want all of the people out there to know?
Well, I think it's really important to remember, no matter what, we can always begin again in life. Yeah. No matter the age, this inhale is a new beginning. This day is a new beginning. And so, no matter what's going on, we can always write and rewrite a chapter or the next chapter in our life. Change, impermanence, it's just what life is. It's what we are. human beings, and to engage with it, get curious and engage with it, and take an active stance. Yeah, co-create. That is just co-create with life. Yeah.
Thank you so much. There was so much wisdom, so many little and big nuggets in this conversation. Thank you so much for being here and for talking with me about the challenging life transitions, how to navigate them, how to come out the other end feeling more like, this is the direction I want to move towards.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Lisa.
And speak to you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.